is up, fight fans, and welcome to episode 4 of Sportsnaut Scrap Report. I am, of course, Jason Burgos, and I'm joined by the globe-trotting, or soon-to-be globe-trotting, the Kevin Lee defending, the Haters Ball title contending, the man we know as Anthony Angry Walker, Senor AW. How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay, except for the fact that I feel slighted by your intro. I am not the contender for the player haters ball. I am the only champion that there ever was and there ever will be. So I am the
My
king hater.
apologies.
I mean, come on now, who else?
Yeah, I mean, I heard about some top contenders in the ranking and stuff like that, but I did not get the latest report. You are the champion.
Pound
Put
for
it
pound,
on the
baby.
books. We have a packed show, a lot of topics to talk about this week in episode 4. So let's get right into it. I mean, the first one I think is one of the more interesting, one of the big stories. We covered it also on Sportsnaut. It was also covered on Ringside Intel as well, the sister site. Francis Ngannou books a bout with the one and only Tyson Fury. Was announced in rumors, then officially announced that earlier this week. WBC champion Tyson Fury, whole bunch of money. Francis Ngannou is sure to make quite a few millions. I guess the big question that comes out of this is, do a lot of people, especially on the MMA side, especially the fans, because the fans are really in the top rankings of the players haters ball a lot of things when people leave the UFC. But do they owe Francis a bit of an apology? Because he left a lot of people, even in the UFC, like the Daniel Cormiers, I think even the Joe Rogan, and Conor McGregor said bad move, shouldn't leave, should stay in the UFC. He left. He bet on himself, which every fighter should. He was a world champion. He left at the best time where his peak value. He left. He got the big gigantic bag. I'm sure he's probably going to make. Let's say he even makes $5 million. $5 million is still a ton of money, but there's a good chance maybe he's making $10 million, and that's a huge amount of money. Should people be apologizing to Francis first? And then also a follow-up question, does this send a message to other fighters? Because we've seen the Tyron Woodleys, we've seen the Ben Askrens go and do this boxing thing when they're well past their prime. Anderson Silva. Should this send a message to maybe an Israel Adesanya when contract time comes up? A Patty Pimblett or something like that. Somebody that has value that they can take somewhere. Should they understand? Look, I can go do boxing. I can always maybe come back to UFC. They're always probably going to take me back. Let me go to boxing. Let me make a few million. Like, is that a message that some of the top fighters in the world, a Volkanovski or something like that? Or is this very much that classic, unique situation where it's two heavyweights, heavyweights are always popular, and that's really the thing here. And not everybody can be a Francis Ngannou, go out there and boxing and get 10 million.
I think it's somewhere in the middle. Francis Ngannou certainly defeated the game of combat sports with this announcement. Like, he did
Yep.
something that pretty much no other fighter outside of like Conor McGregor has done in MMA, and that's crossover to
Mm-hmm.
real money, to real
Yep.
prestige, to a real spotlight. I'm but I also think that this isn't necessarily going to work for everybody.
Mm.
And maybe it's more so because the fighters themselves, they function against their own interests way too often. Maybe not enough of them are going to get the hint that this is possible, that you can.
Yep.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be this huge fight with the Tyson Fury or some huge fight with another big name in another sport.
Yep.
Perhaps it's just another opportunity outside the UFC, and that's what a lot of people just aren't understanding. So your Daniel Cormiers and some of the other UFC personnel that were downplaying Francis Ngannou's value on the market, and fans and pundits and stuff, they were saying, "Oh, he fumbled the bag." Like, that was a common thing you heard. They're not thinking outside the box, or should I say, thinking outside the octagon. Like,
Yeah.
you,
There you
you
go.
got to get outside the octagon sometimes, and Francis Ngannou has won. No matter what happens in that fight, which I'm sure we'll talk about it. I don't like his chances in it. I don't think many people who understand combat sports actually like his chances in it, but I like the way his bank account's going to look when it's over with. And I'll tell you this, if he's making 5 million, that is very low ball for this fight. Very low
Yeah.
ball. If I'm remembering correctly, Conor McGregor was estimated to make like 100 million for his fight
Wow.
with Floyd Mayweather. And we're talking about the numbers like the Fury and Wilder their first fight. They sold a fraction of what the bigger pay per views in the UFC sold, and they were making 10 times what the main eventers on those fights we're making. So I'd be very surprised if Francis Ngannou is doing anything less than 15 to 20 million.
And 50 to 20 is fair. I think on some level he's hurt by he doesn't have that UFC branding behind him, which helped Conor a lot. But Conor's a unique, uncanny kind of famous athlete, stuff like that. I think also what's hurt him a little bit is we've seen these crossovers a little bit, and the MMA guys didn't fare as well. So I think the bloom is off the rose a little bit with that. But I think, yeah, fair. Probably 10, 15, that's fair. And that's a huge amount of money. I mean, he was making good money in UFC. I think he was near $500,000 or so around there per fight at the end, which is unfortunately for the UFC, that's good money for a lot of fighters. But yeah, this is a career-defining thing. It's more than anything he's ever made. Let's quickly talk about it. You've referenced it. It has to be talked about. Early predictions on this fight. I mean, I think we all know where this is going. No disrespect to Francis Ngannou. He, as much as anybody, has a proverbial puncher's chance. He is one of the, not even one, he's the hardest hitter in MMA history. No one has hit like this man. It's freakish. It's crazy. Maybe Derek Lewis. But yeah, he's got the Wilder outside chance, but this is such a huge gap. We've seen what happened with Woodley. We knocked out. We saw what happened to Askren, knocked out. And that was against Jake Paul. Anderson Silva, one of the greatest strikers in MMA history, beaten by Jake Paul, who's been only doing this for a few years. This is Tyson Fury. This is one of the greatest heavyweight fighters of all time. Still in good prime years. Very technical. I mean, my question to you, Anthony, because we both agree he's not going to win. Does he even get past round 4?
I think so. I think Tyson Fury is one of those fighters, much like a Floyd Mayweather, where they understand the show is kind of a big deal. Like,
true,
Floyd Mayweather carried
that's true
Conor McGregor to the 10th round, essentially. Like, he let that go on to give the fans a show, and then when he's okay, I'm done with this, I want to go, party with strippers or whatever. Then he decided that this is over with, and he got it finished. I think Tyson Fury probably does something similar, but I will say in Ngannou's favor here, we can look at the third Wilder fight as an example of what Ngannou could possibly do with very minor technical improvements. I mean, for instance, Ngannou, I've been on record saying this, like, as fantastic as I find his fights and as great as his story is, his striking is certainly not technical. It's improved, but he does a lot of things technically very wrong, and he survives on his strength and his power and his athleticism. Like, that's what kind of gets him there, right? Deontay Wilder's sort of the same type of boxer.
Yeah, he really is.
In their last fight, in the Wilder Fury 3 fight, Wilder learned a jab. Just a jab. He added a pretty nice jab to his arsenal, and he gave Fury the fight of his life. Now, I think if Ngannou makes a change like that, he employs a good jab, he works on his footwork to make it at least serviceable for boxing, then we're talking about something potentially interesting. Maybe. And this is still a long shot, but that's about as good as I can cling on to while giving Ngannou some hope here. Like, I think we're all invested in the story. It would be fantastic to see him, floor Tyson Fury, and like, imagine the first Wilder fight when Fury went down in the last round, and like Ngannou does that, and Fury just doesn't get up. Best story ever. The absolutely greatest story that's ever happened in combat sports, but probability probably very low.
And just to back you up on that point, because that's why Ngannou has more of a chance than, say, Conor versus Floyd, because him and Wilder are worlds apart. Wilder's, he's a better boxer, train more, but Wilder is very much Wilder. He's a wild boxer and stuff like that, and it's his power that gets him through, even when he's been technically outmatched. To go to that, Wilder is 3 inches taller than him, but oddly enough, they both have the same 83-inch reach, which is pretty crazy. So, like you said, if you can develop a jab, it's an interesting fight. But, if you guys are liking this conversation, please like this video, share it, subscribe to our YouTube channel on Sportsnaut, comment, what do you think, how this fight's going to go? Are you happy with the fight? Are you not happy with the fight? Also, let us know any guests you want us to talk to. Moving on kind of from that, because not everybody's happy with this. A lot of people aren't happy with this in boxing, but even in MMA. They'd rather see arguably the best MMA heavyweight champion in the world fight in MMA. He is a exclusive fighter of PFL. Recently on Sportsnaut, please everybody go check it out. I did an interview with Phil DeFries. He is the heavyweight champion at KSW. Guy's 9-0. He's going to defend his title on this Saturday. He very much wants to be the guy who welcomes Ngannou back to MMA in his PFL debut, which is supposed to get their opponent the opponent $2 million. He wants that $2 million. He made it clear multiple times in our conversation. I think it makes sense. He also mentioned KSW is often open to the idea of cross promotion. I think KSW, while being one of the bigger brands, probably the biggest brand in MMA in Europe, there's still maybe not a Bellator or one championship who have these lofty goals, and it's a little harder to do cross promotion with. I think something KSW and PFL, that could be something that could happen. It could work out. He's a respected name. He's a good fighter. He's a much better fighter than when he was in the UFC because he's dealt with anxiety issues. He's in his prime. He's just late 30s. He's a very good grappler, which of course is a problem for Francis. So there's that angle too. And also, PFL is trying to do things in Europe. I believe they're doing a show in France soon. So they're trying to gain some footing in Europe. KSW could maybe help with that, especially in Poland, where the sport's gotten big because of KSW. What do you think of that? Of the possible people that could fight Francis? I mean, I doubt Bellator's going to send somebody. I doubt one championship's going to send anybody. The next best thing really is KSW or Ryzen. Ryzen doesn't have good heavyweights. This seems like the most logical fight for Francis when he does make his PFL debut on pay-per-view.
It does make a lot of sense, and KSW would be the number one promotion I think that would be open to something like this. I sat down with Martin Lewandowski, the one of the founders of KSW, a few years back, and a lot of our conversations centered around the idea of cross promotion. Like, he actively has pursued Bellator, and I've asked Scott Coker about that as well. And there were talks at some point about Bellator and KSW crossing over. I don't believe one championship because they're kind of isolating themselves.
Very
But
much, yeah.
KSW has reached out to promotions before to co-promote, and I think they would be a logical fit. The only problem from KSW's angle is, are you going to potentially devalue one of your biggest stars in favor of PFL? That's sort of the thing. I think that's the roadblock for Bellator, for one championship, for any major promotion that has a heavyweight that makes sense for Francis Ngannou. That's sort of the roadblock. Like, do you potentially waste your own heavyweight champion or a top tier heavyweight or contender in your promotion to boost someone that's making money for another entity? That's sort of the question to be asked. But Filter Freeze makes a lot of sense from a logical standpoint, and one of the better opponents that you can look for outside of the UFC.
Yeah, yeah, and adding to the making it makes sense for both sides. And Phil even mentioned this, that he knows cross promotion is tough, but the best way to do it is if there's a long term relationship that benefits both sides. We've actually seen it with Rizin and Bellator. They've done that. They have a very cohesive relationship that they help each other off and on here and then back and forth. Especially with PFL. PFL's a perfect promotion or league to do cross promotion because they have seasons. There's a big swath of time where fighters are not fighting. If they were allowed to go to a KSW, a few of them, and KSW guys were allowed to be in the season to just add further depth, it just makes so much sense for both sides, really. And KSW is trying to grow in the US. If they can have fighters on ESPN Plus, that's a big deal. So listen, both guys, come on, let's make it happen. Going on from that, let's move on. Well, let's talk about Chael Sonnen. He made a very interesting point during an appearance on the MMA Hour about Israel Adesanya possibly usurping Conor McGregor as the biggest star in the sport. And I'm going to read the quote he made on the show. And he said, "I've never seen anybody like Adesanya, and I only say that a couple of times. I've only said it a couple of other times in my career. I was in the room when Vanderlei Silva walked in, and there was like a glow around him. That happened to me one other time in the sport. It was the first time I ever saw Royce Gracie, and there was like this aura. I'm bringing this to you because there's a different game being played here by Izzy, and you want to know who should be watching this? It's not Duplessis. It's not the rest of the division. It's Conor McGregor. Izzy is coming for his spot. Izzy is coming for top draw in the sport, and he's not that far away." Honestly, it's crazy. I remember I was back in the Garden for the UFC event that was Izzy was on. We fought Brunson. Cormier Lewis was the main event. That was the first time I've ever seen Israel Adesanya in person. I was right there in the media room. He legitimately has that aura. There really is a charisma that permeates off of him. It's legit, and it's probably only stronger now that he's become a champion since then, all this kind of stuff. Do you agree with Chael? I mean, Conor's in a really weak spot. His brand is still strong, but within the sport itself and within fight fans, it's only getting more damage. The less he fights, the more he acts weird, the more he does strange things that who knows what it's related to. I think we know, but we won't say. Is he in that spot? Part of me says yes, but also part of me says no. Israel's going to be 34 at the end of this month. He's already been in the UFC 5 years. Like Conor, he was a wave. He got into the UFC and the wave just rose and rose, rose. And he was in his prime years. He was late 20s. Like you got to catch that and build with youth and then rise to the top. Izzy's already at the top. He's been around for a while. How would he all of a sudden just now become that mainstream guy? Maybe he's the biggest guy in MMA, but I don't think he's going to have the same kind of mainstream appeal that Conor once reached. What do you think?
I think you're right on that assessment. He could be currently the best star in MMA or the biggest draw in MMA, but will he eclipse Connor from like an all time scale? I don't think so. And I think with Connor, he benefited from the perfect timing. You know, there was a lot going on in the UFC that just sort of fostered the conditions to create a Conor McGregor. Like there wasn't
Yeah,
the this insane schedule of just event after event and this endless train of bodies that's being carted in and out the octagon all the time. When Conor rose, so was sort of you paid more attention when the UFC was going on, and Conor was able to ride that wave. Um, Adesanya, his rise has been with the backdrop of 50 events a year and this constant cycle
yeah,
of fighters and news and whatnot. It's just over and over and over and over again. And then on top of that, like I find Israel Adesanya's fights to be exciting. I even enjoyed the Yoel
yeah.
Romero fight, because I think technical brilliance is something that needs to be acknowledged more as exciting, at least for a guy that thinks like me. McGregor had, exciting fights from just a visceral standpoint that just someone
Yeah.
who knew absolutely nothing about fighting can sit there and watch and be like, oh wow, this is good. Oh wow, this is exciting. And I think it's going to be hard to capture that prime McGregor just aura that he had, like the media circus that was around him and stuff. I don't think we're going to see that again in mixed martial arts, at least not in its current state. At least as far as the UFC is concerned, I should say. No one else is going to be able to rise to that occasion, I don't think. And Adesanya, probably the best there is right now, not beating Connor, you know, 2015, 2016 era.
I think the one person, and this may just be, I think the one person that maybe could have got close, and again the inconsistency has killed him is Hamzat Chimaev. There's an appeal to him in a way, and maybe it's not in the U.S. though there are fans in the U.S. But look at how popular Habib has got. He wealthy, very wealthy, and that's based mainly in Russia. Hamzat has the same kind of Habib dominant aura with that Connor flair, boastful, wild, strange that it can appeal to Western audiences like in the US. Hamza could have been that guy, but just he not fighting anymore has really derailed that possibility because he's young, he's on the rise, and his same kind of momentum swing, but it's killed him. Talking about kind of someone that had a similar kind of wave of growth and mainstream notoriety, and it has been away from the sport for a long time, and that is. And before we get to, please again, like, share, subscribe, please comment on your thoughts on these topics in our conversation. But Ronda Rousey rumors of a return, and as a wrestling fan, there's always been talk about she's gonna probably compete at SummerSlam, then disappear again, and when people know that. And then Chelsea Chandler said during her UFC Vegas media scrum this week, she's heard rumors about Ronda Purse probably coming back to the UFC and at featherweight. Now, Ariel Hawani kind of shot those down, saying his sources have told him that's not a possibility. But if that were to happen, wouldn't it be possible? Impossible. I mean, Ronda's not that old. She's still in pretty good athletic year. She's had a lot of time away. Yes, she's done the wrestling, but it's very much a part-time schedule. If she were to come back and 145, okay, fine, but she'd be better off at bantamweight. I think we all agree with. Would just is Misha Tate a third fight like the only real logical fight, and that makes most sense, or is like a Norma Dumont who also fights this weekend, a Macy Chiasson, Raquel Pennington, or if we're just talking wildness, and we talked about her last week, is Juliana Pena the fight for a Ronda Rousey return?
Oh, um, oh, spare me. You know what? I believe that the conversation was at least had. Like someone from the UFC called Ronda Rousey and said, "Hey, are you open to this?" Who knows what she said? But I'm pretty sure they reached out because
Yeah.
I mean we were just talking about Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg fighting in the UFC. Like that's the thing that Dana White is seriously entertaining. So yeah, Ronda Rousey comeback in that sense. But who she fights kind of wouldn't matter, I don't think. I think he depends on what. Maybe I should rephrase that. Depends on which way you're trying to do this. If you're trying to put her up in the best, toughest possible fight, then yeah, you can throw some names out there. You can throw a Raquel Pennington or something like that. But also, you don't want this potential cash cow to get beaten into oblivion again, right?
Yeah.
So do you want someone as tough as Pennington in front of her? Do you want a someone who fights like a dog, like Macy Cheese? No, you probably don't want that. You'd probably want to lay down. You'd want someone who whose style is going to just open up the door for Ronda to hip toss and armbar. Which I think if you go through sort of the scraps of what was supposedly the featherweight division, you'll find someone. Um, so you can go in that route. They can recruit a former boxer or something and that knows nothing about grappling, and they can do that whole song and dance. But Ronda Rousey coming back, I highly doubt that that's going to happen, even if Hunter Campbell's blowing up her phone as we speak.
Yeah, it just, and I get the appeal, and there would be an appeal for her to come back, and she does have name value. She's expanded her brand because of her WWE run and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I think Pena and Pennington would be interesting because Raquel is good, but she has her weaknesses. She has her flaws. She can be grappled, but she probably is more dangerous. Pena is interesting because she's a grappler by heart. She's not a great striker. There's opportunities maybe there. Like you can't put her in Rousey in there with a really good striker. That's just trouble, and that's not gonna happen. So that's why Pena, I think, if you're just gonna blow your load and you're just gonna go one time with Ronda and try to make the most of it, I think Pena. There's a marquee appeal of Rousey versus Pena, and Pena could blow it up, and then
that would be the most like horrid promotion you could ever imagine. Like, but it makes sense. I mean, Pena. I'll just put this on record. Pena wipes the floor with Ronda Rousey.
Okay.
Like Rousey obviously can't take a hit very well. She had like Betch Correia marked up her face when they fought.
Yeah.
Like Pena walks through whatever shots Ronda gives and gives 30 of them right back, and Ronda goes to sleep. Like that's what happens there. And do you want to deal with Juliana Pena after beating Ronda Rousey? I don't think the world wants that. The world doesn't need that. Hard pass.
For next week, we will add players hater, titleist, world titleist, and avid Juliana Pena hater. But that is it for this week. He's excellent. That is it for this week's edition of Sportsnaut Scrap Report. I'm Jason Burgos. He is Anthony the Haters Champion Walker. Until next week, everybody. Bye-bye now.